Welcome to the Greg Bennett Show. I'm your host, Greg Bennett, and today I have a brilliant conversation with one of Australia's greatest sprint swimmers and now world-leading swim coach, a podcast host, and just all-round great guy, Brett Hawke. And in this episode, Brett describes the importance of training and living with intention and how intention could be the difference between Olympic champion and just being average. And Brett discusses how he struggled with his confidence during his own swimming career and felt like an imposter in the waiting room before the championship finals. And he took the lessons he learned from missing the 96 Olympics and what he learned about himself as an athlete, and has just helped hundreds of swimmers become champions. Simply a wonderful conversation with a great athlete and coach. Now, a bit of housekeeping before we go on. Firstly, thank you all so much for listening. And if you're enjoying the show, I'd really encourage you and would appreciate you to share it with your friends and family. And please keep the feedback coming. I really do this show for you, so tell me what you want and I can help you out and make it a better show. So I hope you enjoy this one as much as I did. And remember, success comes to those who endure just one moment longer. I want to give a huge shout out to Athletic Greens for supporting the show and for just being there every day for me. Athletic Greens is now very much a part of my daily routine. Just such a simple way to get a delicious blend of 75 superfoods, vitamins and minerals and probiotics and so much more. I really encourage you to invest in yourself. Invest in your own health for your performance optimization today and for your longevity. Sign up and have it delivered straight to your door. It's just so simple, tastes great, and does what I really need for my health. I've also been doubling down on Athletic Greens vitamin D. Just a huge proportion of the population are vitamin D deficient, myself included. And I focus heavily on getting out in the sun throughout the day, but when I can't, I religiously supplement with vitamin D. And right now, if you order, they'll give you a year's supply of vitamin D plus 5 free travel packs. Athletic Greens is just so much more than a multivitamin and multimineral. It takes to the next level, adding in a daily dose of superfoods, probiotics, greens blends, and so much more to support your gut health, your energy, your immunity, and stress. So please do yourself a favor and sign up. It also makes a great gift for a family member or a friend. So sign up now and get a free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase by visiting athleticgreens.com/Greg. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Greg. Now, you've probably heard me on many of the episodes discussing hyper-ice products with my guests, whether it's sitting in the Normatec compression boots, which I've been doing after solid workouts for, 10 plus years, or it's the Hypervolt percussion massage devices that I use daily to warm me up before going to the gym, or the vibrating massage roller, which I use before every run. All of the Hyper-Ice gear is just so easy to use and just keeps me going. My goal is to keep moving, keep physically fit for many, many years to come. And using the Hyper-Ice products are just helping me do just that. So simple, quick and easy to look after my body at home. And I've just started using the new Hypervolt Go. It's surprisingly powerful and whisper quiet and ultra lightweight at only 1.5 pounds or 680 grams. And it's 30% smaller than the Hypervolt. The Go is ready to provide relief wherever you roam. With 3 speed settings, 2 interchangeable headset attachments, 18-volt rechargeable lithium-ion battery, and like I said, lightweight, easy to use, 1.5 pounds, 680 grams, and it's TSA approved for carry-on. So get 10% off at all Hyper-Ice products using code GREG10 at checkout. Go to hyperice.com. That's HYPERICE.com and use code GREG10 at checkout. Are you someone who uses bike computers while you ride and or wearable devices while you run? Would you like to have it while you swim? For years, I've been using bike computers and wearables on the run to gain feedback to help efficiency and performance. And now I can have it while I swim with the Form Smart Swim goggles. Honestly, these goggles blew my mind. I put the Form Smart Swim goggles on and immediately could see the metrics on the screen. I love playing with my stroke rate and seeing how it affects my pace, just as I did on the bike for most of my career, always trying to find the best cadence to generate power and create the most speed. With Form Smart Swim goggles, you can see all the metrics while you're swimming: distance, pace, stroke rate, and heart rate. They have it all. The swim data is displayed on the goggle lens, and you can customize the display to see the metrics you want to see. The goggles track it all and are automated. You start them at the beginning of your swim, and you don't have to press any buttons in between. They automatically track everything. The goggles connect to the FormSwim app on your smartphone, and there you can review all the details of your swims and see what other swimmers are up to in the Form community as well. Battery life is incredible. 1 hour charge gives you 16 hours of swim time. So go to formswim.com/Greg. That's formswim.com/Greg and get $15 off, or you can use code Greg15 at checkout. All right, today's guest is one of the rare few that not only reached the top of the world as an athlete in his chosen sport of sprint swimming, he also coached numerous athletes to do the same. He's an Australian Olympian at the 2000 Sydney and 2004 Athens Olympic Games, and he's a 5-time Australian national champion and former Australian record holder in the 50-metre freestyle with a 22.07 seconds. And he finished his career with 7 international medals. Prior to his Olympic career, he went to Auburn University to swim, and there he earned 17 All-American honours and was a 9-time NCAA individual champion and helped Auburn win 2 national team championships. Post-Olympic career, he went back to Auburn to become the assistant coach in 2006 and then became head coach in 2009 all the way through to 2018. And during that time, Auburn won the NCAA National title in 2009, and he trained countless Auburn swimmers to the Olympics. He coached Brazilian swimmer Cesar Cielo Filho to the 50-metre freestyle gold medal at the Beijing Olympic Games in 2008. He's now the VP of Swimming Performance and Education at Fitter and Faster, America's #1 swim camps, and he hosts the incredible swimming podcast Inside with Brett Hawke, where he interviews the world's greatest former and present swimmers and swim coaches. It's an honor and a privilege to have one of the great minds of sport join me for a chat. So welcome, and thanks for joining me on the Greg Bennett Show, Brett Hawke. How are you, mate?
Greg, you absolutely nailed the intro, mate. Thanks for that.
as a fellow podcaster, you know that's not easy.
I know. As you were going, I was like, wow, impressive. Look at
this. Thanks, mate. I appreciate that.
No worries.
I got to give you a shout out to our Instagram buddy. I think his name's Alf Pat, who's riding around Panama, 900-kilometer ride. And he said he's really enjoying your show and my show. And he kind of reached out to us both and said, hey, you guys should have each other on each other's shows. So thanks, Alf, for the introduction. And here it is. We're together now.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's great, and I'm into that too. I like the little shout outs, and I love when people reach out and comment about shows that I'm doing or you're doing, and it kind of connects us. So I'm glad he did that.
Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. Are you living in the US permanently now?
Yeah, so I moved over here in 2006 from Australia. I finished up my career in swimming and decided I had something hanging over my head, actually. I hadn't finished my degree from college. I went back and...
Is that right?
Yeah, I turned professional a little early, and that was kind of always just lingering. So came back to do that and just fell into coaching. And from 2006 on, I was coaching at Auburn University in Alabama, living there. And then after I decided that was enough, I kind of... became a little bit of a traveling Wilburys, so I spent some time in LA, and now I've just moved back up to Delaware. And right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm in Florida, so I'm kind of all over the place.
Oh, right. We're right next door to each other. I'm in Florida at the moment as well. And now you married an American woman as well, I think.
Well, yeah, she's Jamaican, but
Jamaican.
She is American citizen, but she's of Jamaican heritage.
I feel like I only mentioned that because I feel like I know probably a dozen or more Australian guys that have come over to the US and married Americans over here. We're slowly infiltrating.
Yeah, it is. And you end up getting stuck here. You have a kind of a 2 to 3 year plan, and then you end up being here 20 years. You're like, oh, well, that's it. I'm done. So,
oops. Now, do you plan on getting back to Australia in the future, or what are you thinking?
I love it. When I was coaching at Auburn, I was just into the work, and time just flew by. Now that I'm out of that realm, I do miss Australia, and I've been homesick. I just don't know how I would get there now. I've got twin girls that are 12, and I just couldn't, move them over to there at this stage of their life. So I'm here for now, and I'll probably be here for a little while longer.
Yeah. Now, here's a question for you, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. Oh, yes, I do. Would you rather coach the Australian or the US Olympic swim team?
Honestly, mate, I represented the US once in 2011. I went to the World University Games as a coach for the US team, and I felt really awkward. And I promised myself I wouldn't do it again, even though I love America. I'm an American
I
citizen.
get it. I get it.
I've fully embraced it. Once you represent Australia at a couple of Olympics, I mean, that's in your blood, and that's hard to get out of. And I felt really awkward on the deck, being around the Australian coaches. It didn't fit me, and I just said I would never do it again. So if I had a chance, I would certainly love to represent Australia at an Olympics.
That's fantastic. I think you and I are much the same. I hold a dual citizenship as well. But there's something, I love America and everything it's given me in terms of my career as an athlete. It gave me so much, and the sponsors and the people and the teams that I've created here. But it's funny, isn't it? There's this like deep inner core thing that says, I'm still kind of Australian, feel a little bit uncomfortable
Yeah.
in the other country's colors. So I get it. I get where you're coming from. When you compare your career to your coaching career, what's given you the bigger thrill in terms of, your own individual performances? Say qualifying for the Sydney Olympics must have been just absolutely mind-boggling to you. But how does that compare to some of the thrill from some of the athletes that you've had? And what do you think? What gives you the biggest buzz?
I mean, it's a good question. It's really hard to answer because I think I kind of categorize them in two different ways. There's certainly one, in a way, was very selfish. Me swimming at an Olympic Games felt very singular, even though I was representing my country and my parents and my friends and family and school and everybody that knew me and grew up with me. It felt like a selfish act, whereas coaching feels very, very much like a team act. I felt very connected when my athlete won the Olympics in the 50 freestyle in 2008. I was representing Brazil, and I cried harder than I've ever cried before because it was just this thrill of knowing that we had achieved something monumental, and I felt part of it. So it's a tough question, but I do feel like I've enjoyed both experiences separately for sure.
I can imagine, I have a similar sort of experience for the 2000 Olympics. My own personal story, I was kind of left off the Australian Olympic team, and it actually was the only time I've been the front pages of the Australian newspapers back then was with the case that went sort of after that team selection. But anyway, I had a mate reach out to me from Canada, Simon Whitfield, and Simon said, Greg, now that you're not in the Olympics, how about you come over and train with me to get me ready for the 2000 Olympic Games? I said, sure, mate, let's go do it. And so I spent 5 months in Canada with Simon, and then he went down, and I was in the stands as the first reserve for the Australians, and here comes Simon down Macquarie Street, down in front of the Opera House there, and then he kicks in front and he wins the gold medal. And I was, in tears. It was a really, really special moment. And then, this is pre 9/11, so he was. After he jumped off the dais and ran over and put the medal around my neck and said, "This is yours, mate." And I was like, "Oh!" I mean, it was a really special moment. I think that's where sport gives us those. You're a grown man, but you still got these tears and this emotional joy is just unbelievable. I mean, for Cesar, was he the first ever Brazilian Olympic gold medalist?
He was, for swimming, first in the country's history, and they've got a storied history of a lot of great Olympians, but he was the first on top of the dais. And honestly, even some of the guys that had come before him were there, and they were crying, and they just felt part of the gold medal. It was really something very unique and very special at that point in time. Something that I couldn't never replicate in that sense. Winning a country's first ever gold medal in a sport. I mean, it's just insane. And so, it was very special. And actually, today I've actually been talking to Cesar on WhatsApp. He's in Brazil right now. And we were actually just reminiscing, and I was sending him some photos of back then. And I actually sent him some photos today of the event and photos that he'd never seen before. And he said he started to get an emotional response again. So it was just coincidence that we were just talking today about that.
And did he win that from lane 8? What was he in? I mean, for sprint swimming, it doesn't matter too much what lane you're in, does it? Or
not necessarily, but I mean, the fastest swimmers generally qualify in the middle of the pool. He actually won the bronze medal in the 100 freestyle from lane 8.
That's right. It was the 100. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yep,
and when he did that, he actually had this moment straight after the race where he looked at me and said, I'm going to be unbeatable in the 50. No one's touching me. And so
Okay.
he swam the next couple of days in the 50 freestyle after the 100, and he qualified fastest out of the morning into the semifinal, qualified fastest into the final, and then ended up winning from lane 4 in the final. So he just made his mind up at that stage that he was going to be unbeatable once he'd won that bronze medal in the 100.
Wow, that must have given you the chills to have an
Oh,
athlete
yeah.
just go, I know. It's like, I know I'm going to win. I mean,
Yeah, it was incredible. The last words he said to me as he walked to the ready room, the marshalling area where the top 8 swimmers in the world go and spend their last minutes alone, he looked at me and he said, "Don't worry, I got this." And I was like,
wow.
wow. I mean, it was incredible. You just don't have that type of confidence in that type of scenario. I mean, he's a 21-year-old kid, never been to the Olympics before, and he's looking at me like, I got this, no problems kind of thing. And it's like, oh, shit, wow, there we go.
And the best part about that is, I mean, we're talking about an event where dun, dun, that's the amount of time between you're an Olympic champion and you suck. I mean, it's like this.
Yeah.
And so to have the confidence that you're going to get the first dun rather than, I mean, that's incredible in itself, like the reaction times and the power and the finish. It's just incredible.
There's a lot of mistakes can be made.
Yeah.
A lot of things can go wrong. And so what you end up having to do is you have to practice with intent. You have to practice at a very, very high level. It's almost like I liken it to somebody that's, playing an instrument like a violin or something and becoming the world's best at that. You can't make a mistake. Everything is perfect and everything has its place, and it's in symphony when it's working. It's beautiful music, and that's kind of what he was creating, is this beautiful symphony that he had practiced over and over again. So by the time he got to the situation where he's under immense pressure and under, intense scrutiny, he's just going back to what he's trained to do. And that's really, I mean, he was fanatical when it came to the precision in his training, which then enabled him to race at that level.
I think you just touched on one of my favorite words when it comes to high performance, and that word is intent.
Yeah.
It's one thing to show up every day and have a great coach and a team around you and have all sorts of athletic ability and be doing the work. But when you come and you do everything you can with absolute intent, it's amazing what can happen, and that being your nutrition, your sleep, your body work, your physical training, all of that. Yeah. It's just incredible. And I think that's why I've always been so impressed with you guys, the raw sprint power athletes, because it truly is that difference. Like for you guys, that intent, that absolute what's running through your system. Have I taken too much caffeine that I'm going to pause too long on the block? Or I love that, whereas I'm an hour 45 athlete and, I screw up the start, I can kind of make up for a bit later. I mean, not that I want to, but with you guys, there's none of that. I mean, that's been, for you, there must be real joy in coaching athletes to find that intent, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I expand on that word. I use the word intention, so I'm always about that. I'm the same as you. I love that word, the intention. What are you doing it? How are you doing it? Were transitions important in your race?
Very. I mean, we talk about intent, and it's the difference between most races at the Olympic distance are but somewhere between 5 and 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And generally, if you look at your transitions when you come from swim to bike, you can't afford to be slipping. That helmet clip slips slightly. You're like, damn it.
Did you practice those transitions?
Oh, relentlessly. I mean, I guess by the time, a bit less as I got older, in my late 30s, and I'd probably done 400, 500 races and I'd practiced it. So probably less. These days with the teenagers getting into the sport, the coaching now is so much better than we had in sort of the early 90s there. But they're now doing everything with a lot more intent than we did. And the equipment's gotten better, and it is improving. Do you guys practice a lot of that? I mean, is that?
Well, what I was going to say is the 50 free is a transition. That's what it is. It's a transition. You have to be perfect. You have to be spot on. You have to practice it with intent. You have to do it over and over again, just like you would have done as a young triathlete. Practicing with intent. It's not good enough. I mean, I'm sure you went into a race and had a bad transition once and thought to yourself, that will never happen again. I'm going to be spot on. And so you went back and you were relentless with it. And so that's what the 50 free is. You have a bad 50 free and you lose by a couple of hundreds of seconds. And at some point you say to yourself, that's not going to happen again. I'm going to control that controllable. Everybody thinks it's hundreds of seconds, but you can actually seriously control those. I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say that you're in control of a tenth of a second, but that's what it comes down to in our race, is that I knew within a tenth of how fast I was swimming at a certain point. Wow. I could swim at 25 from the block and turn around, look at my coach and say, that was 10:32. And he'd be like, yep, 10:32 on the dot. Like, I knew to the hundredth of exactly how fast I was swimming. So that's how precise we would get with our swimming.
Now, how would you train that reaction time? I had our friend, I don't know if you're friends with Mark Webber, Aussie Formula One driver, on the show, and he's been a good mate of mine for a long, long time. And nice. I've always been impressed with how the Formula One drivers driving these cars at 300k an hour plus, and it's just and other drivers around you, and their reaction times. They just have to keep practicing those. What are you guys actually doing for reaction time training?
That's a good question. It's interesting. I mean, there are things you can do, and like we'll just work off the starter's gun. Like we'll pull out the starters. It's all electronic these days, so we'll just pull out a starter's gun and we'll do stuff where we're reacting to that. And in swimming as well, they have lights that when the gun goes off, the light goes off, and they say that the light, you see the light fraction of a second faster than you hear the noise. So we'll turn the sound off sometimes to just react from the light as well. So there's drills and skills that you can do and are absolutely necessary that you need to do in order to practice your reaction time. So it's not just about how fast you move, it's about how well you move once you start moving fast as well. So it's like there's precision in the movement,
Yeah. It's not just jump.
You watch the 100 on the track, and you watch those guys come out of the blocks, and it's not who can get out of the blocks the fastest, who can get out with technique and speed and power. So those things are all important, and they come down to hundreds of seconds. It's just ridiculous how much time we spend on a few 100s.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, but how many times have you seen a gold medal go to the guy that's gone, like literally that 100th of a second, like over and over again? It really comes down to it. And my wife Laura swam for SMU, a little side note, and I think they came second to you guys in 97. Anyway, she won the NCAA in the team relay. Nice. But she would always tell me, that quote, that basically it's, on the first dunt, you're an Olympic champion, and on the second dunt, you just suck. You came fifth. And it's like that. That's what I love about your sport. It's just the dialing in, like you said, the intention, all of that. Now, what I want to do is just get to know you a little bit better and maybe just rewind the clock. Yeah. And where did you grow up, and where did you first find your passion for swimming?
I grew up in Maroubra in Sydney. One of the Bra Boys, they kind of made it famous, the surfers in that area as being a gang. And so it was a rough area. It was tough, a lot of tough kids, a lot of great swimmers, a lot of great triathletes, a lot of great surf lifesavers in the area. It was very sporty. Everybody that lived in that area did something along those lines, grew up as a surfer, a skateboarder. Like, there's just a lot to do and a lot of great athletes around. I, for instance, grew up where I had multiple Olympic swimmers come out of my program. Lee Habler was in 92, Malcolm Allen was in 96. There was just a number of them. And someone that's actually just got himself in the headlines again. Unfortunately, one of my good mates growing up was Scotty Miller. I don't know.
I just saw that on the news this past week. The poor guy. He's
had a rough one, bad choices in his life. But I grew up with Scotty. I know him real well. We actually lived together at one stage. So, I grew up with high level of athletes around the Maroubra area and didn't fully realize or didn't have a full appreciation for it. Maybe I did. Maybe I was thankful that I had high levels of competitors all around me, and so we were lucky in that sense. But I wasn't good. I wasn't one of those people. I was just I was just an average athlete. I was an average swimmer, and at some point that became very frustrating for me. I got into swimming because I had severe asthma growing up as a kid, and doctors basically said, look, just throw him in the pool. And so I started just swimming for health reasons.
You and Kieran Perkins, right? I think he was.
Yeah, exactly. So at the age of 11, I jumped in the pool in Maroubra, and I loved it. I just felt at home. I played rugby, I ran track, I did some other things, but nothing gave me the feeling that swimming gave me. I got a lot of fulfillment out of it, and I loved going to training and just doing the training. I loved it. So, but it wasn't until about the age of 17 where I hadn't fully developed as a young man yet. I was still very immature, but I was getting frustrated with the fact that I wasn't as good a swimmer as I wanted to be. And so it's around that time where you graduate high school, right? And it was that time when my dad said to me, "All right, look, it's time to get a real job. Like, you've got to go out into the workforce. School's over. Swimming was fun, but now it's time to move on." And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't let it go. I started university in Sydney at the age of 18, hated it, dropped out within 3 months. And I knew the Olympics was coming up in about 2.5 years from now. So by the time I dropped out of college to the time that the Atlanta Olympics was coming around was about 2.5 years. And I just said to my dad, I'm going to dedicate this next few years to swimming. And he's like, well, how you got no money, son? What are you going to do? We didn't have money. And so what I did was I worked at Pizza Hut as a Pizza Hut delivery driver. So this is my routine, honestly, for 2 years. So what I did was I would go to practice in the morning, right? I would sleep during the day. Then I would go to practice in the afternoon. So that would be my 2 practices. And then from practice in the afternoon, I'd go straight to Pizza Hut and I'd make myself a pizza for dinner. And then I'd deliver pizzas till 1 o'clock in the morning. And then I'd come home, get a few hours sleep, and go to practice and start it all again. And that's what I did for 2 years. That's how I sustained myself.
I love it.
And that's what I thought to myself, well, I'm dedicating my life to swimming, so that's how I'm going to have success. And what I didn't realize is that, I wasn't taking care of the diet. I wasn't taking care of the sleep.
Well, you were doing with what you could with what you had at the time. And what I love about that is just the simple passion.
Yeah.
Like you wanted something badly enough, and you didn't have the means to worry about diet, and so you had to do it the way you were doing it. I think that's extraordinary. Keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're right. That's it. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. I was just passionate about it, and I didn't know whether I was going to make it. I was just a contender at that stage. I was in the top 20 in Australia. It wasn't like I was 2 or 3. I was just in the top 20. But I wanted to just have a crack at going to an Olympic trials, trying to make an Olympic team. It was just something that really drove me. And I ended up going there, and crazy story, Don Talbot was the head coach of Australia at the time. Don was a ruthless leader, very smart man, but ruthless. And the qualifying standards for the Olympics were, if you finished in the top 6 in the 100 freestyle, then you were automatic qualification consideration. They could take the top 6 athletes. And I ended up finishing 6th in the 100 free. And Don Talbot came to me after that and said, look, Brett, you've made great progress and progression. If you finish first or second in the 50 free, we'll definitely take you to Atlanta. So a couple of days later, I swam the 50 free, and I finished 3rd by 3/100ths of a second.
Oh, get out.
And I think to myself, well, I'm still in the top 6 in the relay, so I'm good. I feel like no one said anything to me. I had to wait an extra couple of days. No one approached me, nothing. So then I'm sitting there, and they're announcing the team, and as they're announcing the team, they're doing it alphabetically, and they get to my letter H, Hawke, and they skip straight past it and they keep going. And so I'm devastated. Like, that was it. Like, I didn't make the Olympic team. I didn't get picked, and no one ever told me why they didn't take me. It was just you're out. And so my Olympic dream was over. I was completely devastated. And it really didn't hit me until I sat there and watched the Olympics in '96 and watched all my teammates and watched my friends and watched all the competitors. That was like, I just felt like a complete loser. I was like, that. My life is over. I'm a Pizza Hut delivery driver. You know what I mean?
I get it.
And from that moment on, looking back now, I've been to 5 straight Olympics and haven't missed an Olympic team since. Swam in Olympic finals, won Olympic gold medals. From the moment where I felt like a complete loser and never thought I'd make an Olympic team. And so it's amazing how you can shift you can change the trajectory of your life if you want to. It takes a shit ton of work and a lot of belief and a lot of sacrifice. But honestly, from 96 on, I thought that was it. I'm done. And I just started making some choices to take back control of my life and do things the way I should have done them in the first place.
quick mini break. I really want to encourage you to do something special for yourself and sign up to Athletic Greens and get a free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase by visiting athleticgreens.com/Greg. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Greg. I'm loving the new HyperVolt Go percussion massage device from Hyperice. It's powerful, quiet, lightweight, and TSA approved so I can use it while I travel. Check out the HyperVolt Go and all the other incredible Hyperice gear at hyperice.com and use code GREG10 for a 10% discount. That's hyperice.com. If you want to see all your key metrics like pace, distance, stroke rate, and heart rate while you swim, you need the Form Smart Swim goggles. Go to formswim.com/Greg. That's formswim.com/Greg and get $15 off. Or you can use code GREG15 at checkout. Is that when the school system in the university system in the US came on the radar? Or who planted that seed? Or was it a scout that found you and said you should come and swim with us? How did that all work out?
It's another crazy story, really. I was swimming at Gosford in 95. I was training up in Gosford. And during the winter, during the summer, which was winter in America, just randomly a school kid from Auburn University came over to work at the pool that I was swimming at, just to work as a lifeguard at the pool. And we started up a friendship. So I ended up making a team that traveled to the World Championships in 1995. This was the year before the Olympics, and in Rio. And so I'd never been to America before. So on the way back from Rio, I decided, why don't I just fly up to this place called Auburn, Alabama, catch up with my friend, and then fly home. So I asked the Australian team if I could do that. So all I had was my Australian swim gear from this World Championship meet, went up to see him for a couple of days. And he was just a student at the university. And he said, we've got a pretty good swim team. Why don't you come down and introduce yourself? So I went down there, and they had a practice going on during. I just walked in, and I had my Australian uniform on, and kind of caught the attention of the coach that was down the other end of the pool. But he sent one of his, minions down to talk to me, one of his, graduate assistants, and I said, can I talk to the coach? I'm interested in your swim team. And he said, Coach asked you to write your times down. And
it's not that easy, mate.
Yeah, he'll get back to you. So I wrote the times down, and I saw him walk down the other end of the pool. The coach looked at him, looked at me, and started walking directly to me. And I was like, okay. I grabbed his attention at least. So it just so happened that it was David Marsh, who's one of the greatest swim coaches in the history of the world. I just walked onto his pool deck at the right time, at the right place, and knew nothing about Auburn, Alabama, and ended up signing on to the team and becoming a part of their team after I missed the team in 96. He threw me a lifeline and said, hey, Brett, are you still interested in coming to America? I said, yeah, absolutely. And so I went there. In December of 96. So I started with the team in January of 97. And in March of 97, we ended up winning the national championship. I ended up winning the 50 freestyle at the NCAA championships. And from that moment on, he put me on a full scholarship, and the rest was history. It was just
isn't that just great how life can just rip the blanket from underneath you, and you fall on your backside, and you feel like it's over, and then you just have the stars align, and it's like, no, this is the path you're meant to be doing, Brett. This is not the one. This is it. I find those kinds of stories just extraordinary, and they're important to share because people need to hear them, especially people that are going through tough times right now. It's like, this too shall pass, and you will have other doors open for you, but you need to take you need to take and make the opportunities. Because what you did there is, call the Australian team. I want to go see my friend in Auburn. I'm on the pool deck. I want to talk to the coach. But there was opportunity there, but you really took advantage of it. I just think that's an extraordinary story. That's wonderful.
You got to put yourself in position to make those things happen. And look, you just can't give up on yourself. I think that's what it comes down to. Like there were times last year where I was as deflated or as anxious or as depressed as anybody in the world. It was tough for all of us. But you realize, look, there's light at the end of the tunnel if you just keep forging forward. If you wake up every day and say, no, not today. Like I'm gonna I'm going to figure something out today. And that's kind of the mentality that I had. I just wouldn't give up on myself, even though everyone else was telling me around me, like, stop, quit, do something different. Something inside of me said, keep pushing forward, keep waking up, keep believing in yourself. And eventually a door opened that was just too good not to walk through. And that's kind of how you set yourself up for those things.
And at that time at Auburn, or was there another moment, or was it over time that you started to believe, you mentioned earlier that, I was kind of average, maybe top 20 in Australia, but was there a moment in your career where you're like, actually, I do have some ability at this? It may not be all the obvious talent that they were looking for at the time, but maybe your ability to be intentional with the work you're doing or whatever. Was there a moment you were like, actually, I can do this?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I've had time just recently to reflect on, some of these questions. It's very difficult to self-reflect sometimes, and sometimes you just avoid it. And throughout my podcast, I've been asking hard questions of people, just like you're asking of me now, of these questions where you do have to self-reflect. So I've spent some time doing that recently. And what I've discovered about myself is that there are certain beliefs that were just there and that I had to overcome. For instance, I'll give you a for instance. So I never grew up in a family where we believed or we were taught that we were anything other than just average, and that's not a bad thing. We weren't special. We weren't destined for greatness. That's not the way we spoke to each other. That's not the talks that we had. We were just average people who would go to work and put in honest work and be honest people and just do the job. And so I never felt of myself to be special. And what I found throughout my career in moments like this, where I walk into Auburn University, I can't have an average mindset anymore. So what I found that I did in self-reflection, I found out that I did this, that I would put on a mask, and sometimes it was a full body mask where everything about myself was fake in a way, in terms of my belief system about myself, or just my inherent, what I believed about myself. You know what I'm saying with this? So when I went to Auburn University, I put myself in situations, I would believe that I was somebody that I was taught that I grew up to believe that I wasn't. So I believed I was special. I believed I was destined for greatness. And I had to convince myself of that at times. I had to put on this mask and pretend I was somebody that I didn't truly believe that I was. But it paid off. And I found out when I did have this alter ego kind of thing, it's almost like Eminem has this alter ego, and so you're not necessarily that person in real life, but in an athletic sense, I had to become that person. I had to believe I was somebody better. I had to believe I was special. And so I became very competitive and very, in a way, arrogant, that I had this belief that I was going to be better than everybody else. And I would speak that way. I would walk that way. I would act that way. I would perform that way. I would put myself above people in order to compete at the highest level. That's the only way I could do it. Is that making sense to you?
No, it does. I think you and I are a lot alike, actually. And I think a lot of that is this, and I've spoken about on this show a fair bit, is this, I wasn't a naturally confident athlete. And it was, and I've even said it with other athletes that I competed against. They're like, really? You always came across it. You were, you were really confident. I was like, actually, no, I think I left a lot of great performances, to the side because I wasn't confident enough to go for the win. And I've talked about it a lot. I had to learn how to win. I wasn't a natural born winner. I was somebody that had to learn how to win. And a part of that was, yes, living life with intent, understanding, sleep, nutrition, blah, 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 all the bits and pieces. But then the visualizing and the mental games was a lot of work for me to constantly come back and build my confidence. And towards the end of my career, I'm talking late 30s, early 40s, I really felt like I was becoming the person that I was trying to create that entire time. But it took me 20 years of doing it, relentlessly before I could walk onto a start line and go, right, I'm going to win this race. And it felt like I was going to win it, deep inside. It wasn't like just saying it out loud. It was like, no, I'm like you had with Celio, when he said, I'm going to win. I had a few moments like that towards the end of my career, probably from about 35 onwards. But really, when I go back and look at the missing out on the 2000 Olympic team and some of those things that happened to me, a bit like you missing 96, were what I kind of needed to take
Yeah.
more ownership and more control of what, I was doing in my own life.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so did you feel that by even just doing this over and over again, that it did start to change your own self-belief and your attitudes, and that it wasn't just projecting confidence, but it actually was an inward confidence? Did it start happening for you?
For sure, to a certain extent. The only time it wouldn't work for me, where I felt like an imposter, where I felt like I'd been exposed as a faker, was during the biggest moments when the spotlight was the brightest. I didn't perform well in those situations. I felt like everybody could see through me. I felt like everybody knew I was faking it, because what would ultimately happen is I'd get into a room with the top swimmers in the world, and they were bigger and stronger, and they were just better all-round athletes. When you walk into a room with Roger Federer, you don't think that you're the best tennis player on earth because you've seen Roger Federer play. You're like, you're not stupid either, And so I felt like when I walked into a pool with Alexander Popov, who's one of the greatest sprinters of all time, I felt like a faker. I felt like, Brett, you can't convince him that you're better than him. He's not. He doesn't believe you. And everybody in this pool, when the spotlight is on you, they can see the difference. They know. And so it was very hard for me in those big moments to get on the podium. So I ended up finishing fourth at the World Championships, constantly fourth and fifth and sixth. That's where I would finish year after year. I would never get on the podium because I found myself tensing up in those big moments. And it happened at the Athens Olympics. I was second fastest into the finals in lane 5, so I'm in the middle of the pool. That's where you want to be in Olympics. You want to be right there. And as soon as the spotlight hit me, I started to have these doubts, and I'm talking very slight. When most people would jump into my head, and be like, "Oh no, you were pretty confident." And there was just stuff creeping in that just made me feel like an imposter, and it just didn't allow me to pull the best out of myself. It allowed me to swim really well and compete. If you look at that race, I missed the podium by less than a tenth of a second. So you're thinking to yourself, that's nothing. But I knew inside of me I wasn't performing at my best. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it. But do you think it made you a better coach?
Yeah.
Because of that? Like, you can actually see that in your athletes now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can read body language from a mile away now because I spot it. And I'm like...
Because you have it. It's amazing when this is the gift you've been given.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You've been there. You know what they're going through. You can relate to them at a far deeper level because you've gone through it yourself. And that's what makes you an extraordinary, wonderful coach. I have a side story with Popov, Alexander Popov, because he was in the 90s. He was, mate, it was Alexander Popov and then everybody else. It was just, he was a legend. But I remember swimming at the pool in Thredbo after they built the beautiful pool in the Snowy Mountains. And I came down to have the showers, and we had the Australian triathlon team there. And then there was Popov's coach. What was his name?
Gennady
Turetsky, and his whole squad there. And I went down to the showers. And Michael Klim came out and he's like, "G'day, Greg." I'm like, "Oh shit, he knew my name. That was awesome, Climmy." And we became mates since, but it was just like, oh wow. And then Popov came out of the shower and said, "Oh, g'day, Greg. Watched your race on the weekend," or whatever. I mean, obviously in a very strong Russian accent, but it was a real thrill for me. The fact that they knew my name, I felt like I'd made it. I felt
yeah. That's it. That's the way I felt about Popov. I revered the man. I was like, this guy is a legend. But he was like that with me too. He's been on my podcast twice. I actually interviewed him from Russia. He's sitting in his sauna and he's giving this amazing interview. And that's just how he was. He was like that with me, but I revered him. I just thought he was incredible.
That's awesome. Yeah, I did see that. He's on your podcast, I think, number 50 and then 100. Which
I went
were appropriate.
Yeah, exactly. I timed that well.
Yeah, well, you're going to have to, Grant Hackett's going to have to come back at number 1500, huh?
Yeah, we've got to laugh at that. A few years.
Now, the NCAA program obviously worked for you. It was something that, transitioned you out of this funk after missing, Atlanta, got you, 2000, 2004, and then the coaching program's been phenomenal. For young athletes maybe listening to this, is it something you would encourage them to do for their own careers, not just swimming, maybe it's other sports, international athletes especially?
I don't see the downfall in it. There's no negative to me. There's only positive. You're going to be part of a team, which is it's very hard to replicate the type of team that you're going to be part of other than when you're in college. These teams have, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of budget. when I was the head coach at Auburn, my budget was over $1 million just for the swim team. So it's like you're going to be well funded, you're going to be well looked after. You get food, you get accommodation, you get some amazing training facilities. You get to be part of a team. You travel with your friends for 4 years. You grow, you learn, you get an education. I mean, like, where's the downside to me? It's like, why wouldn't you? Well, you could spend your time working at Pizza Hut in Sydney, or you could go to America and get a degree. It's like, it doesn't make sense. Like, of course I'm going to do that, And so to me, there's only an upside. And then look, you spend your years 18 to 22, you come out and you can be a professional athlete for the next 10 years.
What about if you're a phenom, which we've seen some of these young athletes in high school athletes and then they come out and they have the option of taking, massive professional contracts to go professional right away, or they could go to Stanford. What about then? Do you think they should delay that, or do you think they still should go do the NCAA? Because for listeners that don't know, if you go to NCAA, swim for a university under scholarship, you can't have prize money or professional sponsorships on the outside of it. So you put that on hold for 4 years, and then potentially, maybe you're not as good a swimmer coming out of university as pre. I mean, I guess that's the gamble you make, right?
Like if you're Katie Ledecky and you're Olympic champion, and then now you're going into college, like, why? To me, it didn't make sense. Like, go and make as much money as you can.
Yeah.
Like,
that's kind of my mindset as well. The whole point of getting a degree is to make money.
Yeah,
have a job that pays you. But if the money's there now, you might as well take it, and you can always do a degree a bit later, right?
Yeah, well, that's coming from me. I don't know your background, but I didn't have a lot of money growing up. She did, from what I understand. She comes from a very well-off family. She wanted an experience. She wanted to be part of a college team. Okay, well, that's fine, but for me, I'm like, take as much money as you can out of athletics while you can. Like, who knows? Like, you get injured and that's the end of you. And it's like, take it while you can get it. So, yeah, in certain instances, I say,
the freaks of the world, the real freaks of the world, maybe take it while it's there.
Yeah, get it while you can.
I think there was even that girl from Colorado, and then
Missy Franklin.
That's it, Missy Franklin.
Yeah,
I think she had like a $1 million sort of pro contract, and she went to Stanford to swim. And I think she still made the Olympics coming out of university, but I don't think
she did. But she didn't do well. Yeah, she missed an opportunity for millions of dollars. She kind of blew it, and I don't know if she regrets it or not. But it's certainly, she missed out on a lot, I think. So it's one of those tough decisions.
You're like I am. I think maybe it's an Australian thing. We leave the big island. We're like, right, what can we do as we transition out of Australia? And now you've had some of the world's greatest coaches that you've either worked with or worked under. David Marsh, you mentioned. Geez, how many NCAA titles did that go in? 12 or something?
Yeah, 12.
And then Richard Quick came over, and you were working with him as assistant coach, and he also had numerous titles with was it Stanford and Texas?
Women, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then what do you think made these two coaches so great? And what separated them from the other great coaches around?
It's a good question. They have an it factor. They have that special sauce that the other coaches just don't have it. And it's like any great athlete. What makes Michael Phelps special? He's just a normal human being. He looks normal, but when he's in the water, he's abnormal. And then that's. There are coaches like that, and I think I'm a very gifted coach. I think I'm actually a better coach than I was swimmer, and I was an Olympic finalist. So I think I certainly have a gift that I feel like separates me from other coaches. But these two, you're talking about the best of the best. They just have something that they have a way of connecting with kids on different levels that brings out the best in them. David at times was an antagonist. You would hate him. But that would bring out the best. Yeah, I hated him, but it would bring out the best in you, and he would just smile at the end of that, be like, "I got you," and like, son of a bitch, you did, So, but then other times, he'd put his arm around other people, and they needed that. So it's like they just have this gift to be able to manipulate people to get the best out of them. And I use that word manipulation in a way, in a positive light.
I get it. I get what you mean. Yeah.
And Richard was special like that too.
Well, I mean, I think that also, when you look at your formula to become the great coach you are, I think being the athlete, and working with numerous coaches along the way, and then being a coach and working alongside great coaches is all part of the formula to make you who you are today. I mean, was it a hard transition for you? You know, I've talked a lot in this show about transitioning, you know, from professional athlete to coach, or just, you know, leaving professional sport. Was that a hard transition for you, or was it a simple one to go back in 2006 and just start coaching?
Actually, for me, it wasn't. I didn't intend it. What happened is I went back to do my degree, like I told you, and one of the coaches, as soon as I got there, one of the assistant coaches got cancer, and David asked me if I could fill in for the summer. And so what he did was he gave me a group of 10 athletes that he didn't want to work with. He was like, these are the pain in the ass group, you know. I want you to take them, and you have freedom to do whatever you want with them. Like, you can do whatever you want. Just get them away from me. And I was like, okay.
I wonder if they know that. Do they know that?
Yeah, I've told that story a few times. They probably looked around and were like, yeah, we're the riffraff. So at the end of the summer, they all swam best times, and they were the happiest kids. They were they were all having a great time. And David just said, "Wow, you got a gift. Like you're good at this." And I was like, "That was the easiest thing I've ever done. Like, what was so difficult about that? I just made them smile and swim fast. That was easy." So I fell into coaching, and I was really good at it immediately. Within 2 years, Cesar won the Olympic gold medal. So I started coaching in 2006. 2 years later, I coached an Olympic gold medalist. So it's like it all happened really quick. And now when I look back on it in hindsight, it's like, what, that happened too quick. Because then I had to go through some bumps and bruises once I became the head coach. You know, you go from managing a team of 10 athletes, which is very manageable for me, to now you're the head coach and you've got 60 athletes under you, and then you've got a staff of 10 people, and now all of a sudden I'm a manager. I'm not a coach, I'm a manager. And so that management was very difficult for me. So that transition was way harder than it was from going to swim to coach.
Because he won the gold medal sort of 2 years within your coaching career, did it feel like, well, now I've kind of won the gold, now I've got to prove why I won it? Was there that a little bit of like, or was it, you know, because I've had friends that have won the gold medal as athletes at a young age, and then they kind of feel like the rest of their career they're almost trying to prove themselves to themselves and everybody else that they did deserve it.
Yeah, maybe there was a piece of that. You know, there were certainly coaches that looked at me and you could tell they had that look of you lucky son of a bitch. You didn't earn that. You know, like you didn't deserve that. That was 2 years. No way. You're going to burn in hell for that, you know, like, so
I've been on pool deck for 40 years.
Yeah, you son of a bitch. Yeah, you're going to get yours. Don't worry. So there was certainly that. So I tried to work against that. Like, I don't want to go to hell for this, you know? So, I think there was that part of it. I never felt like after that I needed to prove myself. I was lucky that I had a great group of kids and they were doing well. At the next year, we went to the World Championships. And I think I took 17 kids to the World Championships, and we ended up winning 23 medals. I mean, we just cleaned house, broke world records. I mean, I was on fire. 2008
was that 2009? Yeah,
2009, yeah, at the World Championships in Rome. We just went berserk, and I was breaking. You know, my guys were breaking world records left and right. So I felt like coaching was the easiest thing on earth. You know, I really connected with it. I was doing well. What was difficult for me, like I said, was management. I really struggle with management. I didn't grow up in business. I didn't do a business degree. I didn't learn how to manage. I didn't know how to manage a budget or a staff or so dealing with people, and that was very, very difficult for me. So once I fell into the head coaching role in 2009, that's when coaching became really challenging for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you still had a tremendous success along the way. I mean, I think Auburn still were top 10 every year in the NCAAs. I mean, you guys won the title, and didn't you get a NCAA Coach of the Year award in something?
Yeah, in 2009. Right? Yeah, Richard Quick was the head coach, and he ended up falling ill with brain cancer at the end of 2008. So for the period of about 3 months, I filled in as the interim head coach, and then we ended up winning the NCAA title that year, and they gave me kind of the co-head coach of the year for the NCAA. So it was, again, 2009 was a great year for me. Everything was clicking. It just became more difficult once I became the head coach, and now I'm in control of the whole program. And I'd never coached really women before. Even before that, I was coaching men, and now they said, all right, Brett, you're the head coach of the women's team, and I've got 30 women all of a sudden. It's like, so that was challenging to figure out the differences between coaching men and women, and it was just all a struggle. So it wasn't like we did terribly. It was just went from breaking world records to making things were just a lot more challenging, you know?
I get it. When it comes to, talking some of your coaching philosophies, and it's an interesting sport, swimming, and it's a bit like athletics, but it's an individual sport. But tell me a bit about the role of the team and the relationships, and how those relationships can help an individual perform at an even higher level, because I notice that in the NCAA program, it really seems to me that there's a lot of camaraderie. There's a lot of, we're all in this together. Is that kind of part of the whole coaching philosophy for you?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. In order to be successful at the NCAA level, or, at the conference level, we were in the SEC, the Southeastern Conference. So in order to be successful either there or at the NCAA, you need a team of people collectively performing. And the only way that you can get a team of people collectively performing is that if they care enough about each other so that their teammates' performance become equally or more important than their own performance. And that's when you get the best out of people. So, Caleb Dressel, who's one of the greatest athletes in the history of the sport right now, he went to Florida, and they never won an NCAA title with him there. And he was dominating NCAAs at the time. And for 4 years, his team never won because they didn't have a team of people. They had Caleb Dressel and a couple of other athletes. So the importance of building a team at that level is really crucial. So everybody plays a role. Everybody's important. And the more cohesive and collective their thinking can be, the better you'll do as a team. And so if you're going to get judged, like you just said even before, when I was coaching, we finished top 10 every year. Well, top 10 is an achievement, right? It's a big deal, but it's not winning. And so in order to separate yourself from being a top 10 team and actually being a winning team, you need 15 to 20 athletes all performing at the highest level. And that's really challenging to get.
A part of all of that, creating this kind of environment or getting the best out of an individual, do you work a lot alongside the athletes with their mental strategies? Are you helping them with, obviously we discussed earlier about managing self-doubt and fear and anxiety and confidence and all of that. Do you have a hands-on approach with the visualizing practices and, whether that be word affirmations and all of that kind of stuff, or do you outsource for that kind of work?
No, yeah, I do a lot of that myself. I studied psychology; that was my degree, and then, like we talked about, I experienced these things myself, where I had put on masks and I'd had to perform, and found self-discovery that way. So I have a good connection with the athletes. I do think it's important to bring in another voice and other people to help and aid, and be part of that process as well over the course of a season. So we certainly bring people in, but in terms of general confidence and belief in building, in working with athletes, then yes, I think there are certain things that you can do throughout the course of training and practices that need to be practiced. It's not about just training a system. Like as a triathlete, you need a great engine. You need a system. You need the physiology needs to be there for sure, right? But you also need that mentality. I've watched recently a documentary on Lance Armstrong, and we can say what we want about Lance, but his mentality was second to none, right? And he was a killer. And so I think, and there were things Lance was doing along the way that enhanced that killer mentality as well, right? Apart from the drugs he was taking, right? But in terms,
I'm like, what?
yeah. But in terms of his belief system and the way that he competed, like he would do things that even in practice would separate him. And that's what we try and do, is we try and identify things that you're going to experience on race day and incorporate those into your training so that you're prepared. And a lot of that really has to do with repetition of excellence. I think that's one thing, a commitment to excellence. When you're committed to excellence, it's a lot easier to be mentally tough and confident when you expect that out of yourself every day and you hold yourself to a standard, right?
I think, is there a component? I was kind of thinking back, and in my own career at times when I felt mentally ready, physically ready, but emotionally I wasn't in the right place, and people might have heard me on the show say, but if my relationships at home, in my relationship with maybe my girlfriend at the time or whatever was a little bit off, it was like I couldn't perform,
Yeah.
and then I'd be up against guys where they'd just fallen in love or their wife had just had a kid, and they were just, you couldn't beat them. It didn't matter what you did; they were just on fire. And I've had quite a few doctors on this show, and we've discussed kind of the fact that what you think has a direct impact on your physiology. It's this, it's like this emotional trigger. How can we tap into that? How can you be emotionally happy in a happy place? Like you said, when you had those 10 athletes and you were a happy squad and you were positive and you were enjoying it and the energy and you got a lot of results out of that. Is that something that as a coach for these, especially for these young athletes but some of the Olympians you've had as well, it's one thing to talk about visualizing a mental approach, but do you discuss with them kind of their home life or how to manage their emotions and that kind of thing and expectations?
Yeah, it's tough, right? I found that the best athletes at the highest level are very good at compartmentalizing, right? And that can be unhealthy in real life situations, but it can be very healthy in in athletic sense, right? So like you I'm sure didn't just have a situation with your girlfriend on race day, right? I'm sure that there was probably moments throughout your training where your girlfriend had an emotional effect on you. And so what I found is the best athletes do compartmentalize even at training. When they walk into that pool, they become the super swimmer, and everything else. They didn't care about the bills they had to pay. They didn't care whether their car ran out of gas on the way to the pool. They didn't care whether they failed the test or their girlfriend broke up with them. When they walked into that pool, they were the athlete they wanted to be, and so they could compartmentalize. They could push everything else aside, even for a short amount of time. They could have this immense focus, and it certainly translated well on race day. And that's what Michael Phelps, like, how does Michael Phelps win 23 golds over multiple Olympics? Because he's great at compartmentalizing his life, which is now a struggle for him because he can't just shut things out anymore. He's got true, real feelings that he's dealing with. But as an athlete, he could shut that shit off and be like, I am superhuman right now. Nothing's penetrating me. I'm hyper-focused on performing. And that's what I found the best athletes do really well is that intense compartmentalization.
I like that. It's like their ability, they can escape and go into this whole other world. But then when they finish their careers, there is no escape mechanism. And that's where they get themselves in a bit of trouble, as we've seen with quite a few athletes, when they retire, and whether it be drugs and all sorts of things or just trying to find themselves and they don't have that escape button anymore. Yeah. That's an interesting way of looking at it. I hadn't thought about it. I think that's now shifting gear a little bit, the physical training for you guys, and how much of it, for a sprint swimmer, how much is it really just dry land versus in the water? I mean, are you in the water that much, or is it just working in gym? And on that, I guess there's another question. Then and now, your career in the 90s into the early noughties compared to where we are now with technology and information and data, has training changed much in those sort of 25, 30 years?
Yeah, for sure, right? Like, so you mentioned early on, my best time was 22:07. At the time, I'm thinking to myself, how do I go faster? I spent 7 years trying to break 22 seconds, right? And trying to figure it out. Couldn't figure it out. I laugh now at somebody who swims 22:07. I'm like, what a loser, Like,
it's like our sport too, mate. Trust me.
I'm like, how easy is it to break 22? Like, Brett, come on, man, you couldn't do it. Like, I could do it with my eyes closed, coaching someone to do that now. So it's like, it's shifted, it's changed, and it's evolved. And I think I've been part of that process in swimming. Actually, I think I've created a paradigm shift where when I came in, we started doing things differently. Not so much that it was completely unique, but what I took more of a track and field approach. Actually, funny enough, I had an experience once where I went to train with a friend of mine, John Stephenson. Do you know John Stephenson at all?
That name is so familiar, and I'm trying to think.
Yeah, so he's a 400-meter runner. I believe he got a gold medal at the Commonwealth Games.
Yeah. He was on the 4x400 relay.
Yeah.
Didn't they win gold?
Yeah, gold. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
John's a good friend of mine. Anyway, I went to visit him in UCLA once, and he was training out there for a week with Maurice Green, and I believe Maurice won on the 100 in Sydney at the Sydney Olympics. Anyway, I spent a week with him, and it just changed my perspective on sprinting. Like, this was incredible. So what we ended up doing was training 5 days straight, and every workout was tough, and it was 3 hours. So it was from 11 o'clock in the day to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's what you do. You clock in at 11, you clock out at 1, and you wouldn't come back until the next day. But every day was the same. So you'd go straight to the gym at 11, you'd work out for an hour and a half, then you'd go to the track and you'd work out for an hour and a half. And a lot of that was initially skill-based stuff into speed work. And they would just repeat that 5 days. And then on the sixth day, they would do an active recovery, meaning they would get a massage, or they'd go for a light jog, or they'd go for a cold tub, whatever it was. And then on Sunday would be just a passive, just relax, And they would repeat this. And this guy's the fastest runner in the world, and these guys were blazing down the track. Anyway, I spent a week with them training. I thought to myself, what are we doing in the pool? Like, we're doing all this garbage.
5 a.m. and then again, 3 p.m.
It's like nonsense. Like, these guys are jacked and ripped and fast and happy and confident and brash, and I'm like, man, I'm beat down all the time. This is nonsense. So it really shifted my perspective. I started to think about swimming and training differently, and I started to implement some of those things into my training. We started having success. So we got away from the traditional sense of swimming and sprinting, and there was a revolution around 2006. Honestly, when I came into the sport, I was part of the revolution. There was a couple of people that were willing to take some risks and changes, and that's, like I said to you, and when I started to experiment with those 10 athletes that first summer, we did things that nobody was doing, and it was laughed at. Like, you can't swim fast doing that stuff, and everybody's swimming fast and everybody's confident. And so all of a sudden, it's like, well, hang on, what are you doing? Let's copy that. So now, swimming has shifted completely, and the amount of people that are swimming way beyond what I did, it makes me look like a joke now,
Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny when we look back and we go, I'm glad I got to have my time when I did, because I don't think an average guy like me is making it anymore.
But, I mean, like Caleb Dressel swimming 1 second faster than that, and within 15 years, I'm like, come on, I'm not that old, I can still remember when I was swimming, but 15 years later, he's swimming 1 second faster than me in the 50 free. That is madness. You would think, if you had told me 15 years ago that somebody would be swimming 21 flat in the 50, I'd say, well, he's just a drug addict. There's no way you can do it. It's not humanly possible. But here we are. The training has shifted so much, and the mentality, it's incredible where we're at these days.
It's funny. We look at our sport of triathlon, and we've talked about it on this show where, when I was running, and I was one of the earlier guys to break the 30 minutes for 10K.
Yeah.
That was kind of a big deal. And it was a big deal for me. It was kind of a lifelong goal. And then I did it, and everyone was talking about it. Then now, if we go back to 2012 Olympics, and Alistair Brownlee won, in London there in front of 100,000 people, a lot of pressure on the guy, and he runs off the bike at 29:06.
Yeah.
And then now, 8 years later, we've got guys that are outrunning Alistair at times for the 5K. They're running 13:30. Like, these guys can almost go to any individual sport and be seriously competitive.
They're just sprinting.
We really, really couldn't. I also noticed with the swimmers, and maybe I don't want to judge too much, but have swimmers leaned out a little bit? It looks like they're really, like you said, the athletic guys have always been that sort of jacked, lean. I kind of feel like the swimmers as a whole, even over all the distances, leaned out over these last 20 years.
Yeah, it's less about pure muscle, where I think that we used to think, all right, in order to be fast, you have to be strong, so let's gain muscle. And it's not about that. It's about gaining power, and the way that you can transfer that power into your stroke. And so, swimmers have leaned up a little bit for sure, and learned to it's called, they use the term functional movements now, right? So like everything you do in the gym is functional. So how does it translate to the pool? And so it's less about moving weight as opposed to how do you move weight in a way that you can transfer that power into the pool. And that's certainly what's happening now. It's very transferable, and swimmers are extremely powerful, but a little bit leaner. Yeah.
I've noticed that. And do you work with your athletes when it comes to the general health, or do you stay away with that, when we're talking supplements or anything like that? Or, I mean, do you have a team of staff that do that for you, or what do you kind of, when you go to an athlete, do you say, look, are you taking your vitamin D, your C, and these bits and
Yeah.
pieces? Or
No, I don't. I'm not that hands-on. I don't. I don't. But what I do is figure out what they are taking and why. And like we'll sit,
yeah,
we'll have
yeah.
conversations, and then we'll say, all right, what's the products out there that are absolutely, no doubt, safe and healthy, and are going to give you benefits. Like why wouldn't you just eat food at the right time, the right type of food at the right time? All right, why are we supplementing? So we'll figure that stuff out together and find companies that are obviously good to work with. But generally, I don't put a lot of emphasis on that. I put more emphasis on what you're eating and when you're eating it. Timing of food and the type of food and the quality, who's making the food, that sort of thing. I think, to me, that's far more important than any supplement you can put in your body. And then also I spend a lot of time on the recovery, and this is another shift in training that has been huge for sprinting, is that we started to appreciate and understand the value of recovery. It's so crucial to performance, and so we build in recovery throughout the week. And it's kind of like along the same lines as that Maurice Green thing, is like you do a workout and 24 hours later you'd come back and do another one. You wouldn't try and shove one in 3 or 4 hours later. It's like allow the body to recover, come back and perform at its highest level once it's ready to go again. And so that shift in mentality has certainly helped.
Yeah, you got to allow the body to rebuild and get stronger. And I mean, I think that's been the big one. I mean, for our generation, I put us in together here, it was kind of like this work harder and, and the science has started coming along, but really we listen to it a little bit when we go down the AAS or something in Australia, but really like, oh yeah, I just want to work hard. I just want to be powerful and strong and fast. But now, I look at these programs that are coming out and the wearable devices that we can all have, whether it be biking, running, or swimming. Now, if you've listened, I've got Form goggles. Form swim goggles sponsored this show, and having data on your lens, I can see my stroke rate with the heart rate and my pace. So now I can play with cadence and power to figure out what makes me go faster, just like I did on the bike 20 years ago. It's like this new little bit of information that's there, and I think these wearable devices that can monitor sleep, there's so many out there now, I won't mention any names, and the type of sleep you're getting, the type of recovery you're getting, it takes that whole recovery to another level compared to what we had. And I think there's more information I think the coach's role is shifting in the sense that there's a lot of data, and it's sifting through, a bit like you said with the supplementations, it's sifting through and saying what data is really helpful and going to make you a better athlete and what is just noise.
Exactly. There's a lot more information out there for athletes, whereas there's a lot of guesswork before, and all this data is taking out some of that guesswork and giving you hard stuff. But then you have to figure out, well, where do I put value in this? I understand my sleep pattern, for instance, right? It's telling me that I only got 6 hours and I'm at a 7 out of 10 in terms of recovery. It's like, well, screw it. I got to go again. Like I don't care what it's telling me. I gotta go. So it's like, you have to make those decisions still of like, do I listen to this or do I push through this? And I think, it's all good information. It's certainly helping us, but I don't try not to get hung up on it.
It's an interesting one. I had a guy by the name of Dr. Dan Plews on, and he's an incredible guy. Just he's a British guy living in New Zealand, helping with the America's Cup and the rowers and all sorts of sports down there, exercise physiologist. And his whole doctorate was on HRV, heart rate variability, and the effects of maybe training, the type of training you do each day, depending on what your heart rate variability is. And it's an interesting world now where the science is coming in and it can be incredibly useful. But at what point do we say, like you just said, look, I had a 7 out of 10 sleep. Let's just get this work in. I don't know. For me, the future is exciting, but also scary in the sense because it's really how much are we stepping away from, the best athlete in the world is going to be the one that also just works really, really hard with intent,
Yeah. And that's it. I find people like the doctor you just mentioned as extremely valuable, but there's also a fine line that's his passion, right? And that's where he's decided to dedicate his life into that one area and that one field. And to me, it's not about one area that's make or break. Like, I'm not going to put all my time and attention into exactly what he's telling me. I'm going to take it on and see how I can apply it. But that's his passion, and to him, that's everything. It could be. I don't know the guy, but I'm talking just in general terms. Sometimes when you meet people like that, they think they have the answer. And what I think in terms of my ability to coach at the highest level is I have to take all those passions from all those different people and take it into and apply it into what I'm doing overall to get the best out of the athlete. And sometimes I just have to say, you know what, I don't agree with you in there. I got to do this. And so
I think in fairness to Dan, I think he's one of those guys you could easily work with. He's doing phenomenal work with all these guys, the grinders and everybody on the America's Cup. Actually, I saw on one of your podcasts, you had Kai Hurst come on for a chat. Mm-hmm. Isn't he a great guy? I had him on my show as well. Yeah, just legend. Blown away by a guy that can do 3 sports at the highest level.
I know. We actually, we trained together for a while, we swam together, and it's just impressive to see the capacity that guy had. I mean, I'm sure he'd be a great triathlete, honestly.
I know, he said he started doing triathlons now, although he's a large boy, so he's got a frame to carry.
Yeah, that's true too. You'd have to thin out a little bit.
Yeah. On your podcast, have there been any that have just really stood out to you? I mean, you mentioned Popov was kind of a highlight. Has there been, for your show, has there been kind of ones that have really stood out for you that were, memorable?
Look, I mean, they're all memorable in a way, but I've had some moments where I had a really good conversation with Bob Bowman, who is Michael Phelps' coach, from the time he was a young kid all the way through his career. And I find people like that just interesting. And I love the fact that Michael stayed with him the whole time. It's very rare in sport these days that someone would raise someone from a kid all the way to be the greatest Olympian of all time. And so to me, that's fascinating to see that progression, have the ups and downs that they had. So I'm just fascinated in stories like that. Bob may or may not be the greatest coach who ever lived. I don't know, but to have that experience is just so fascinating to me, and there's so much to take away from that. And he's a great speaker and articulates really well, had great stories. So certainly loved my interview with him. But I try and take something away from everybody. Everybody's got a story,
Everybody's got a story. Isn't it fascinating? The more you do this podcasting, I find myself, I'll be at the playground with my 1 and 3-year-old, and there's a parent standing there, and just start having a conversation, and it's almost like, and I leave the playground going, everybody's got a story, everybody's got a journey, everybody's had something, and it's and everybody's fascinating. I'm a bit like you. I think that's been one of the highlights of doing this show is getting to know people from different areas of the world, like your life in Maruba and growing up in a that kind of a neighborhood, and I think it's I just and then to where you are now. You know what I mean?
No,
it's
you're
incredible.
Right. Yeah, I interviewed a photographer the other day, and I thought, not many people are going to connect with this. It's a photographer. She had an amazing story, and I'm like, she's been to 9 Olympics, summer, winter, and just her passion and her understanding of her craft. It's like, everyone's got a story, and they're all fascinating to me.
Yeah, I'm right. I'm right there with you. Have you had any sort of massive bloopers or anything? I mean, I feel like these podcast things happen. Have you anything?
I try not to get too controversial. I try and I stay away from tabloid. I mean, there's certainly parts of stories that I know of people that I'm like, I'm not even going to touch that. It doesn't interest me, So other people have written about that. It's like, I don't care what party you went to or whatever. It's like.
Well, the Australian swim team seem to have plenty of stories.
Oh, listen, I got to tell you, some of the interviews I've had with some of those guys, I could have gone a lot deeper. Don't you worry about that.
I just feel like every sort of year or so, it's like another one's made the media. But for people that don't know, Australian swimming is almost like for Americans, baseball, NFL, our swimmers are put on a massive pedestal. We expect the world from them. We expect gold medals. We expect them to be fantastic people and whatever. So when they do slip up, the media really does grab hold of it. I mean,
I was lucky. I was part of this golden age, from Kieran Perkins.
You really were. Yeah, you really were.
Kieran came on and kind of shifted. Kieran was the first millionaire swimmer in history. He made $1 million young, back in I think 92, 93, and that shifted swimming completely. And all of a sudden, swimmers became important, swimming became professional, and they started becoming stars and making money, like you said, and being watched and revered and judged. And so I was just part of that era and very lucky. I traveled the world with Ian Thorpe and Grant Hackett and Michael Klim and these guys that were making great money and being real celebrities. And I got to watch them, in front of the camera and behind the camera and everything in between. So it was very fascinating. Yeah, I learned a lot. I was very, very fortunate, very lucky. But you're right. Swimming is one of those sports in Australia that is just put on a pedestal.
It really is. Where do you hope to go with your show? I mean, you're sort of 1 year in, I guess, now, and is it more of the same? Or there's so many great swimmers and swim coaches and exercise physiologists and, like you said, photographers.
Yeah. I'm trying to explore the sport, for sure. I'd love to have a studio and be doing it a little bit more professional. Like a lot of it,
you and me both.
A lot of it's just on the road, and I'm just like parked, and it's like, all right, here we go, let's shoot this thing. And so I feel very amateur. I'd love to make it cleaner and a little bit more consumable, But I don't know. I've really enjoyed the space of high end, top level swimming and talking to some of the best athletes. I still love it. I'm negotiating right now with Bruce Pearl, who is the basketball coach at Auburn University, one of the most famous basketball coaches in the country, to come on my show. And I'm looking at different areas of excellence as well. I think I'll branch out from time to time, but I do love the swimming space. It's my passion, and so I'll probably stay in that.
Good man. Well, you're doing a fantastic job. So. Mate, I think this is a pretty good place to wrap it up for you. What's next for you, though? I did see, are you doing something with USC? Did I read that?
Well, listen, during COVID, pool space was at a premium in LA. And so I decided to volunteer at USC to try and get some pool space for a couple of my athletes. I'm working right now with a pop star that just came out to start swimming again. His name's Cody Simpson. And, he's very famous in the music scene. Yeah. And then he decided hey, I want to start swimming. And so I said, well, I don't really have a job right now in terms of coaching anyone, so why don't I help you? I'm pretty good at it. And so we started working together about 7 months ago. I started working with him in LA, and pools were shutting down left and right. And so that's kind of why we're here in Orlando right now. We're in an Airbnb right now. We're at a friend's pool because we have access out here in Orlando. We don't have any access in LA. And we're out here spending a lot of money trying to just improve our craft. And he's actually going to compete tomorrow in a trial. I think this will be his second official trial. And it's exciting. There's a young kid who's coming back to the sport again. And so, it's pretty exciting.
Sounds like a man of many talents.
Many talents, yeah. And so we're trying to get him ultimately to the Paris Olympics. He doesn't necessarily want to make Tokyo in a few months. He's not at that level yet, but he's getting closer. But his ultimate goal would be to make the Australian swim team for Paris in 2024. So that's what we're aiming for.
Well, he's reached out to the right guy to get him there.
Yeah, I think so.
Good man.
Yeah, thanks, Greg.
Well, Brett, well, thanks so much for your time, mate, and just sharing your journey and just so much knowledge. This was just absolutely fantastic.
I appreciate it.
Where can listeners follow you? Where do you post things? It's
my podcast is called Inside with Brett Hawke, and it's on everywhere you can get it. I like to watch it because I do put up a video. We do a Zoom call and record it, so I watch it on YouTube. But you can certainly get it on Apple Podcasts. All the top podcasting sites. I have a producer that puts all that stuff up for me, which is nice. But I like to watch it on YouTube. I like the interaction between the guests and see their face when they react. And so it's Inside with Brett Hawke on YouTube. Check it out.
Perfect, mate. Well, this has been fantastic. And another shout out to Alf Pat for connecting us too, mate, because I really enjoyed this. Yeah. It opened my eyes to the swimming world and everything else, and so much learning from you guys. So thanks everybody for listening, and you can find all the show notes and timestamps, links and coupon codes at bennettendurance.com/media. Thanks again, Brett.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it, mate. Thanks.
All right. Stay on the line. Cheers.
Thanks a lot for listening. If you enjoyed the show, your support would truly be appreciated. You can visit the Patreon page, or you can subscribe with your podcast app of choice. Don't miss the next episode, so subscribe and be notified. For show notes, if you want to know more, please visit bennettendurance.com. I'm Phil Liggett, and on behalf of Greg Bennett, here's to the next time, and I hope you will join Greg again very soon.